There is a particular kind of person who has said the words, "I trust God with my finances," and meant it, but still felt something tighten in their chest every time they looked at their bank balance. Not because their faith isn't real, not because they haven't prayed about it, but because trusting God with money is one of the quietest, strangest, and most layered things a Christian can actually try to do. And most of us assume the main sign that we've gotten there is that the anxiety goes away. In this video, I want to tell you what actually changes, because it's not what most people expect. The tricky thing about financial trust is that you can perform it without actually having it. You can give generously, budget responsibly, and never miss a tithe, and still have a heart that is quietly gripping money like a life raft. It's a little like holding an umbrella indoors. You're technically carrying it, but you haven't actually trusted the sky yet. The shift that happens when trust becomes real isn't always visible on the outside. It happens somewhere much harder to see. If you're someone who wants to understand what faith actually looks like when it touches the way you handle money, not the theory of it, but the real internal experience, take a moment and like this video and subscribe to Stewarded Mind. This channel exists for Christians who want to go deeper than financial tips and understand what money actually reveals about the heart. Number 1 is that you stop checking your balance as a way to feel safe. There is a man, picture him at 11 at night, sitting in a dim room, phone in hand, opening his banking app for the 3rd time that day. Nothing has changed since the last time he looked. The number is the same, but he checks anyway because looking at it gives him something that looking away doesn't. A small sense of control, a momentary feeling that things are okay. He wouldn't call it fear, he'd call it being responsible. But Proverbs 3 says to lean not on your own understanding. And what that verse is quietly pointing at is this: there is a kind of understanding we lean on that has nothing to do with wisdom and everything to do with the illusion of control. When trust in God begins to take root financially, the compulsive checking starts to slow. Not because the numbers become more comfortable, but because the number stops being the thing that determines whether everything is okay. That shift is quieter than people expect, but it is real. The second change is that generosity starts to feel different. There is a man who gives, consistently, faithfully, but who has always felt a small, private tension at the moment the money actually leaves. Not guilt, not regret, something more like a quick, instinctive calculation running in the background. Can I actually afford this? What if something comes up? He gives anyway, but the act still costs him something emotional that he doesn't fully understand. Matthew 6:24 says you cannot serve both God and money. That verse is not primarily about greed. It's about the fact that money, left unchecked in the heart, becomes a competing source of security. When trust deepens, the tension at the moment of giving gradually begins to loosen. Not because he has more, but because he is less convinced that having it is what keeps him safe. Generosity starts to feel less like subtraction and more like participation. That is a real and significant change. Number 3, and this one is easy to miss, is that provision starts to feel like a gift rather than a reward. Here is a subtle pattern that hides inside Christian money psychology. A man gets a raise, or a bill gets paid unexpectedly, and his first internal move is something like, "I worked hard for this, I planned well, I made the right calls." And gratitude comes, but it comes after the self-acknowledgement. It's an afterthought. Philippians 4 says Paul learned contentment, and there is something important in that word, learned. Because the realization that provision is grace and not just compensation takes time to actually settle into the bones. When trust matures, the first response to financial provision quietly begins to shift. The gratitude comes first, the self-credit moves to the background. That is not a small thing. The fourth shift, the one most people don't talk about, is that financial decisions get slower and quieter. There's a man standing in a store, holding something he can afford, trying to figure out if he should buy it. It sounds simple, but for someone in the middle of learning to trust God financially, even ordinary decisions can feel spiritually laden. The question underneath the question is, am I stewarding this well, or am I just justifying what I want? What changes when trust deepens is that those questions stop feeling like a test and start feeling like a conversation. The anxiety around money decisions softens into something more like discernment. That is what it looks like when the relationship between your faith and your finances begins to actually integrate. Proverbs 3 says to trust with all your heart, not just the generous moments, not just the giving decisions, but all of it. The late-night balance checking, the tension at the moment of generosity, the way provision lands, the ordinary decision in the middle of a store. What these 4 shifts have in common is that they are not about financial performance, they are about what money means inside the heart. And that is exactly where Scripture does its quietest, most serious work. You are not being asked to become someone who never thinks about money. You are being invited to become someone for whom money no longer carries the weight it once did. That is a different kind of freedom than most financial content will ever offer you. We started by talking about the gap between saying you trust God and actually feeling it. The 4 shifts we walked through, compulsive checking, the tension in generosity, how provision lands, and the ordinary decision in the middle of a store, none of them happen all at once, and none of them make you spiritually mature overnight, but they are signs that something real is forming. If this kind of reflection has been useful to you, share it with someone who might be carrying the same quiet weight. And if you want to keep exploring what money reveals about the heart, the next video is already there. I'm Stewarded Mind, and I'll see you in the next reflection.